Hello everybody, today I'll be talking about the Legion of Everblight Battle Group box. This is the first purchase I've ever made with Hordes and War Machine, but I think this is probably one of my favorite factions. They may not be the best, but they are a lot of fun to play as. But they are a bit complicated as opposed to the Troll Bloods and the Scorn. They are a lot more simpler. Shows you on the back here, it gives you Nerif, Krissa, the Nephilim Bolt Thrower, and 2 Shredders. And this is everything that it contains. As for the inside of the box, they have a ruler, which is definitely something you would want to upgrade. It only goes up to 18 inches, and it is made out of paper, or very thin plastic. I would recommend something like a Gale Force 9 ruler. They're very nice. They go up to like 10 feet, something around there, and it can lock down with this. If you hold this right here while it's extended, it'll hold it in place. When you let go, it'll go back. But what is really useful is they have a Primal Rules Digest, which is very useful for people learning to play this game. I personally used it several times when trying to learn the game. I bookmarked a few stuff like the rules for terrain. I had problems with that. Disabled war beasts and what happens when you cripple a certain subclass. Also, mainly the power attacks. They're really useful for that because they just have so many power attacks and it's confusing to remember them all when you're first learning to play the game. But yeah, this is something that is very important that comes with the battle box, so do not get rid of this. Next up, they also have a really cool book. It has some, it's not a book really, it's more like a, I don't know what you would call this, it's really thin, but it's really neat. It has some lore, some nice cover art, and most importantly, it does show you how to paint everything, really useful. And something that's not too important, it comes with this little paper fold out, but I'll get back to that in a second. It also comes with the basic training guide, which shows you how to play the game. And this is like a miniature paper mat that is kind of like one of these mats, but like about a quarter the size. So this isn't very good, but you would definitely want to upgrade this. The basic training was very useful. I didn't use it much because I pretty much knew how to play the game by this point. But something really neat it does is that it shows you a training scenario that's on the back of that. I'll get to that in a second. And it also has templates, which is obviously something you want to upgrade, like, you know, get actual templates. But yeah, it definitely comes in there. As for the mat, I'll get into this. This is the training side of the mat. This is what I had to help me practice. It had a little nice scenario in the basic training right there. Like, you know, you would start here, you move to there, do that. Like, they'd move to there, fight in the middle of something. But this is actually what I played on for quite some time. It might look pretty big, but if you see here, one tile is about the size of my hand, and it constantly stands up like this. It would be really annoying, because, like, you'd start right there, and then you'd have somebody move to here, and then either it'd press down like that, or they would slide down. So bigger mats like this one aren't cheap necessarily, but you definitely want to upgrade it as opposed to this paper one. Now, as opposed to the contents that actually come inside of it, not all the paper stuff over there, it comes with a nice, neat little wall template here. Now, it's like about an inch tall. It stands up on its own, even on the paper thing. And it was really useful for learning terrain, but you do have to tape it around the edges here, so make sure you have tape. And it's not very big, but, you know, it's good for a war machine learning how to use terrain. It comes with 4 dice, 15 Fury tokens, and 3 spell tokens. Now, I took out all of the Fury tokens. I don't know why that one's in there. And I put it in a separate container because I have, like, I think 3 battle boxes? Yeah, I have quite a bit. Now, moving on to the models. Now, I had a problem because I moved all of my cards into another container, so I'll just get them out here real quick. These are the original cards. I kept these inside of the battle box. Now, they have really nice art, and you know, they are made of pretty nice plastic. Like if you've ever used Pokemon cards, they're kind of like that, except they have sharp corner edges instead of those rounded edges. I used these for a very long time, but as you can see, they were made in 2016 if my camera would focus. And they are quite outdated. Now, these are the new cards. They have different art for the shredders, but other than that, there's not very much else. So, they do have updated rules, though. They fixed a lot of the points cost. It'd be really nice if my camera would focus, but, they do have quite some different stats, like as you can see, the shredder compared to the older shredder. This is the old one, this is the new one. You can see that nothing has actually changed on this. So, I printed this one out, it's paper as you can see. Probably could have saved some ink if I didn't print it out, but I don't know. It felt good to print out all the Legion cards because they did change quite a bit. Not the shredders, obviously, but some of the other cards. Now we can move into the actual model review. So, reviewing the models consecutively, first would be the shredders. Now, the battle box comes with 2 shredders. They recommend you paint them like this, sort of white skin, brown scales, or I don't know if you can call those scales more like bones. But I did decide to go with a different approach. I decided to go with a sort of black, sort of grayish main color. And for the bones, I did like a dark blue fade to light blue sort of effect. Now, these guys were incredibly hard to paint. Like, mainly these parts that are like the scales or something, because they're really small, and then like, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's kind of like, when my camera focus, there we go. It's sort of like a dark blue fade to light blue, even on the smaller scales here. And the base was actually pretty easy to do with the dirt, the grass, and the snow. I don't know if you could tell that was snow, but it was snow since the Legion of Everblight. Paint the base gray, because I thought that looked a lot better than black, like you can see on the bottom. And I got my dad to do like these facing counters. You know, the black line is like the front face, and these runes right here are just some cool decoration. Okay then. Now, as for the shredder itself as a model, it's really easy to use, but can be a bit difficult to get used to using. Now, since Krissa can afford to have 2 as well as everything else in the battle box, it does make them a bit easier to understand when you have 2 instead of 1, because when you're playing a game, you have it rush forward, it gets killed immediately, and then you still have the other one to figure out how to use. And it's a good thing that the battle box comes with 2 shredders, because if you have 1 shredder, it's not going to do anything. Because on its card here, you can see it has something called Flank Friendly Faction Warbeast. Now that means they get +2 to attack rolls when both of them are attacking the same enemy. So you can see on their own, they have a melee attack of 5, which isn't very good, but when they're attacking the same thing, they have a melee attack of 7, which is above average. Now as for their damage, they do 10 damage. Well, they do a combined of power and strength of 10, but that is not very good. So they are best at taking out light warjacks or like smaller infantry units or even a solo, because they're really good at hitting something, just not doing very much damage to it. Now, for a scenario where they would run into a light warjack, it would be best to have one of them run up straight forward, And then if you can, since they have a strong speed, a speed of 6, you could have one try to run around the back of the Warjack, so that way he gets like a PS of, no, he gets a melee attack of like 9, which is a lot better because this guy will get a 7, this guy will get a 9. And that's a really good chance of hitting. Or, you know, they could do okay on their own, but you do have to have them team up with something. Like, if you have a Ravagore already attacking something, they would do okay if you could have them run around the side, because they would be focused on attacking the other Warjack, Warjack, and this guy could just, you know, do some side damage, which would be cool because, you know, they'll be thinking they're taking a lot of damage from this, and then, like, they'll have, like, 3 health points left, then this little guy can just swoop in and take him out. So, overall, I would give the Shredders, like, I don't know, maybe a 7, 8 at best, because although they are very good for teaming up, they have very low armor and very low health. But a defense of 13 makes them incredibly difficult to hit. Next up, we have the Nephilim Bolt Thrower, that'd be interesting. But no, the Nephilim Bolt Thrower. Now, the way they recommend you paint it is once again like the white skin and brown sort of bone, and they recommend that you paint everything else just silver. Now, I took a bit of a different approach. Once again, I made the bone like blue fade to, dark blue fade to light blue fade to white, because this guy's a bit taller than the Shredders. So, for his bow, I recommend you try and paint it a bit darker brown because it fits in better. Well, you would paint it a light brown if you would paint his skin white, because then it would fit in a bit better. And I did paint the armor silver because I think that fit in better with his skin tone. And instead of making this quiver brown, I made it black and I used some blue dry brush so that way it could have sort of a frost effect. Now, overall, light ranged war beasts never do very good. Like, always have like a rat of 5 or like a 6 in a lucky scenario. But, you know, they just aren't the best. They aren't the best. Like, an armor of 16 makes them average for a light war beast. PS 11 makes them below average for attacking. But if HAL 14 ranged attack is okay, it's definitely good for starting off. And a max fury of 3 makes them good for, like, power shots. But what they're also good at, what the Nephilim is good at, is on criticals, this guy knocks down whatever he's shooting. And if he even hits somebody, they get pushed D3 away from their location, which if you don't know what that means, it means you roll a one-sided dice, you take that number, cut it in half, and that's how far they roll. They go back. So overall, I give the Nephilim a 6, a 7 at best. The Shredders are definitely a lot easier to use and a lot more fun to use. Next up, we have Krissa, the Warcaster. I don't even know. She is incredibly difficult to paint. I got my dad to paint Krissa because this was very difficult. As for the actual Warcaster element, I would say she is below average as a Warcaster. A fury of 6 means she can't handle much fury, especially for a war group that has, like, exceptionally average fury cost. She can take in below average. What is very good, though, is that she has a set defense, so if something tries to charge her, they get -2 to hitting her, which is very good, because that brings her defense from 14, which is below average for a Warcaster, up to a 16, which is above average for a Warcaster, or average. I don't have very much Warcasters. A mat of 7 makes her good for hitting stuff, but, you know, you don't want your Warcaster actually attacking anything. She can hold up to 31 points, if my camera would focus, and that is very good, though. That is average, which is good because she has an average battle group. Except for the Nerif. The Nerif is very good. As for her spells, which is really what you want to look forward for in a Warcaster, she has Cloak of Ash, which means that living models suffer -2 on attack, and she can cast it on something else. So, if you cast that on, like, the Nerf, he is almost impossible to hit. Howling Flames is a spray attack, which moves up to 10 inches forward, and this is actually 8 inches, so if he was right here, she would still hit this guy. It does continuous fire, and that's about it. You don't, its damage is like 12, which isn't very good. Quickness means that if you spend up to 3 amounts of Fury points, you can spend 1, 2, or 3. She can move 2 inches for each point of Fury spent. So if she wants to, if she's already moved, and he's right there, like almost in melee range, she can spend 3 Fury and like back up 6 inches. She also has one of the best spells, Tactical Supremacy, which means that you just spend 2 focus, and everybody at the end of their activation can move 3 inches, which means that after everybody is already moved, everybody is attacked, they can move another 3 inches, which is really good. So overall, I'd give Carissa like a 7, 8 at max. She's not my favorite Warcaster, but she's also not the worst. Hello there again. And last and best is definitely the Nerf, the actual dragon of the Legion of... Okay, well, it's not necessarily the dragon. It's like a lesser dragon. It's a really cool one, though. To paint this guy, if I would sum it up, is like trying to... Painting this guy is like, why do I have to do this? Because it's very difficult painting this guy. Now, look at all the scales he has. You have to paint all of those. If you see, like, on his wing here, there are actually scales. And they're very small. He has gills on the side of his face. He has an underbelly, which was hard to get to. And even his tail. He has an underside of that too, which was almost impossible to paint. That's why it's pretty much only red. And on the top here, it's pink. Why? Okay, then. Now, he does look very sick, though. He is Can you not? He is definitely my favorite Warbeast. He's not my favorite. Can you not do that? Can you not do that? He's not my favorite Warbeast, but he's definitely up there. He is really cool. Somewhat easy to use. He can take some getting used to. Now, he moves 7 inches per movement. An armor of 16 is below average for a heavy Warbeast, but he does have a defense of 14, which is above average for a Warbeast. And this guy's really good for combo attacks. So he can have up to 3 Fury, and if it was anything above that, this guy would be a bit too overpowered. Now remember how I was talking about how everybody else in the war group was good at attacking small things, or like small warjacks? This guy is good for assassinations and attacking heavy warjacks. So, let's say there is a Manticore. He can move up to 7 inches. Then he can use his Grasping Tail attack, which does 13, a PS of 13, which isn't very good, but really you're not going for damage with the Grasping Tail. The Grasping Tail has something called Coil, which means that if you manage to hit your target with Coil, every other attack you do this turn automatically hits. With the Nerf, not everything in your war group. The Hammerhead is what you want to do all your damage with. It is a PS of 15, but you get to use it after you do Grasping Tail, and you can use it up to 3 more times if you use all of his Fury. And the Nerf has a mat of 7, which is above average, and so he can easily hit things, especially if he's attacking from behind. Which means that brings his mat of 7 up to a 9, and most heavy warjacks have like a defense of 12, so you need to roll a 3. And his Hammerhead attack has something called Beatback, which means that if you manage to hit with Hammerhead, they get pushed back an inch and you get to move forward an inch. And that is the Legion of Everblight battle group. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. Have a nice day.